Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Well, we've been talking about the last two episodes. If you haven't listened to them,
Yeah.
if you haven't listened to them, you need to go back and listen to them because they're building, and it's been an evolving thing. That's kind of an impromptu conversation that we wanted to sit down and have. But it's about the journey of Abby's sickness and the journey of her coming alive and feeling powerful and her healing process, not only in her body, but in her heart in this last season. Yeah. And today we're going to end up getting into my portion of that journey at some point in this. But
it's a big deal.
Part of this journey that we've invited all of our listeners in on is that we're headed off to Spain for Abby to get the treatment that's necessary to help her body. And it was... It feels right to us, and it feels like the next step. But with it comes really large amount of
a
big chunk of moolah,
big chunk,
gold bars.
And if you've had chronic sickness, you know, I think between last year and this year, we already have a down payment for a great house that we have spent on my body.
Yeah. So
like, it is if you've been sick, if you've been chronically sick, you know, it is lots and lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
So this is another chunk after the chunks we've been doing. And so I love it because typically that would have pushed my buttons in the past. But this time I was like, no, there's a solution for this. There's an answer. And then I just felt it all of a sudden. It's like the idea came, now is the time to make this product, allow people like the gift that you already were wanting to give. My validation talk is my most asked for talk. Even in the LFA course, the Living Fully Alive course, people are like, can I get just this one talk to give to everybody I know?
Right.
I mean, the whole course is phenomenal, they say, but they want everyone to get it. And so I have had requests for this topic for so long. And I was like, I know if I make this, people can partner with me. They get to buy something for a good cause, but it's actually something that will make their life a lot better. Yeah.
So we created the Compassion Project, and that's out. And you can go to stumvalconsulting.com/courses/ the Compassion Project. And you can find it there and all the information on it. It's downloadable and all kinds of cool stuff. So you can go check that out if you want to get into supporting Abby's health journey and get radical transformation when it comes to healing in your own life and your own experience.
And one thing I want to say also, if you buy it, share on social media, get the word out.
Yeah.
That's another way you can help.
That can totally help. So thanks for joining us on our journey with all of that stuff, you guys. We really feel so loved. And Abby's felt so loved by you guys reaching out and letting her know you're praying for her. Or you're just like, she's on your heart. And
I don't think people know that it's literally fed my soul.
Yeah. In very heavy and dark times.
Yeah, absolutely.
That have been through this process. And we're going to get into my heavy and dark times and some of what I've gone through in this last year. And I'll let you kind of like lead into this if you want.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk really quick about chronic sickness, because if you haven't ever experienced chronic sickness, it's hard to imagine. I would say probably impossible, almost impossible. But chronic sickness affects you in a different way than being sick does. So most people, lots of people get the flu for a week.
And they're like, that was hell. It was terrible.
Totally. And then they bounce back and they're fine. And people can't imagine what it's like chronic sickness is like being caught in a wave, and every time the wave starts to go down, so you think you're going to get your feet on solid ground, another wave comes and another wave comes and another wave comes until you're like, you can't breathe and you're just going to die in the ocean. Like you can't fight to get back in.
And I would say that even added to that, you feel like at some point you're fine. You've surfaced and you're like, oh, it's all gone. And then it comes and grabs you again. And so you begin to be on edge about, when's this going to come grab me?
Well,
again?
And I don't think I get to, I'm fine, but I'm like, oh, I'm feeling hope, like one symptom's less. Right. Oh, am I going to start to get better? And then symptoms come back like hits you hard and you're like, oh my gosh,
and you begin to live on edge, waiting for the next thing that's going to come and take you out.
Yeah. I also say chronic sickness is a lot like kind of like a cup of water. So the water is full. So one extra drip. What? Waterboarding. It's a lot like that. It's like one extra drip of anything in your life sends all the water spilling over because you're always at capacity. You're always full. You're always pushing through. You're always surviving. So one extra thing feels like it really knocks you out, and it can begin to make you feel fragile. And even like, I know Pizzi has gone through a season where she was really sick too. And it can make you, I remember her being like, I feel worthless. Like all I'm doing, I'm a burden to my family. I can't take care of my kids or my husband. I'm just costing everyone and I can't contribute at all. And I remember her, you get to a point where pain is so bad and you do feel like you're not contributing, where you're like, it'd be better if I was just dead.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, it would be better. And that's never actually the truth.
Right.
But that's how it feels in those moments.
Yeah.
And so, so I just wanted to lay out, like, some of you are not going to understand, and Justin's going to talk through what his thoughts about sickness were years ago and then now what they are now.
Yeah. And because I have a unique perspective, not only being on the other side of someone that's had chronic sickness, but I went through a season of myself after being someone who was classically fine and could push through anything.
Yeah.
And so that's a unique probably way to describe stuff, because I know both sides of the coin.
Yeah. So I want to I thought we'd just start with the beginning of our story, which is, so when I met Justin, I never thought that I would be sick for my whole life. Like that was never, which thank God, because that would have been horrible if I thought that. But I definitely thought like, I'm going to be fine in like a minute here. I had just had like 2 years where my hormones were not horrible. They were like the best they had been in my life.
Yeah.
And then something had happened and they'd become horrible again. But I think I thought, oh, well, they were just better. They'll go back to being better in a second.
Yeah.
That's literally what I thought. And so when I met you, I never thought like you're marrying into a situation where I could be sick. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what you thought though.
Well, I don't know how else to explain it, but when I saw Abby, I could see that there was like for lack of better words, there was affliction on her life. Like there was an affliction that was there, a physical affliction that was haunting her body. And it felt like this was not a season, just a short season of affliction.
Yeah.
Like there could be an extensive season of affliction that was with her. And that could be 5 years.
Yeah.
That could be 20 years. That could be the rest of like life around Abby. I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew it wasn't just a momentary lapse of sickness that was going to be there. Which
I would just like to highlight that you have a crazy knower. You know lots of things about lots of people.
I do.
That's why you're so good at this job, because you will like know when your clients are lying to you when there's literally no symptoms.
I know.
You just have a crazy knower.
And I've called him out on it.
Yes. It's kind of fun because you'll be like, I know you were in this place at this time doing this thing. What are you? It's kind of fun. But
he's a magician reading his crystal
how
ball.
How does he know? A magician. So
a wizard, sorry.
I don't know. I was just thinking it was a funny picture altogether. It made me think of Mickey with Phantasma anyway. So you knew, and what did you think about that?
There was a journey for me where I had to ask the question, do I want to be with someone who's chronically sick, potentially for the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
And in our friendship that I had, I remember a friend of mine said, can you live without her in your life? And he said, of course you can live without a person.
Yeah, because you're not codependent.
No. But I mean, he was like, in the sense of, is this like, if you couldn't have this best friend in your world, how would that affect you? If you knew that you could never speak to them again?
Yeah.
I was like, that feels devastating. I don't want to. I know I could, but I don't want to do life like that. And I remember with that reality of myself and me looking at the idea of you having affliction and that could potentially really affect me in my life and how I did life. There was something inside of me. It's weird. Let me back up. The movie A Walk to Remember.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Old school.
Yeah. F you, Nicholas Sparks. There was an element inside of that movie that I was drawn to, and it probably was my codependency. I'm like, I'll be a hero and love someone who's deathly sick.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I know that there was some brokenness, obviously, in my own codependency with that. But there was also something about like, what does it look like when you choose to love radically? Not just like someone who can't or won't love you back.
Yeah.
But what does sacrificial love look like? And that was something that was always inside of me. And I knew that it would be it would probably be a price of great sacrifice that I would be paying, potentially saying yes to the affliction in your world. But I remember saying to God, I'm willing to pay that price.
Ugh.
I love who she is. I love the friendship that I have so much. I'm willing to walk down that road. And I remember...
I'm a little sappy over here.
And again, I don't know if it was part of the personality inside of me or the codependency mixed into the mix of it. But I mean, I love to walk to remember because I love the sacrificial element. And it's not been a one-sided relationship where I've sacrificed and you haven't. It's been massive sacrifice on your end. And that's the beauty of healthy love exchange. But that was really my heart posture. And I remember saying yes. And I said yes, knowing fully well walking down the aisle with you concept that there was going to be a lot to come that was going to come with a lot of tears. At some point, and I wouldn't allow myself to go down the road of what are those tears going to look like, because there's not grace to sit and think about like, how am I going to handle this or that? I was just like, I will figure out how to handle it with each day as it comes, whatever it looks like.
Yeah. It's actually very, and I want to just give this hope for people. I remember my whole life praying. I was like, I always thought the real definition of love was that you'd be willing to sacrifice for someone. I saw all the rom-coms and was like, none of you guys know what love is. Love is that I will like lay down my life to love you. And I knew for marriage that I would need somebody who believed in sacrifice, because I knew marriage costs both people.
If you're going to do it right and do it long term.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Anyways.
But so I think it's just beautiful because you can actually set an intention of what you desire, and you can find that in your life. So I think we both ended up having this magnetic belief system that was the same about love. And I think it's incredible. I didn't know that until like 7 years into our marriage. You never told me that. You never told me that you counted the cost. And honestly, I think it's one of the most beautiful, incredible things ever to have somebody see a price they're going to have to pay and say, I want that anyway. Like, I want you with the cost of whatever this is going to do. Oh my gosh, it's just so...
Getting a little weepy-eyed there?
I'm a little weepy. But it just is incredible, and it's beautiful. And that's one of the things I say in dating, like when people, if they can't see the cost of the other person. And I remember asking one of the guys I dated, like, what are your concerns? What are your red flags about me? And he's like, I don't have any. And I was like, well, that's dumb. And he's like, no, I don't. And I was like, then I could never marry you.
Yeah, because you don't see me accurately.
Yeah, like if you don't see my cost, I want somebody who counts the cost and wants to be with me. And I didn't try to make myself be a cost. No. It's just, you could clearly see.
I think that's why even when I talk to singles, I know that this sounds... I don't know. Some people may not know how to digest this in certain circles of life, but I have such a high value for no sex prior to marriage, not because it's dirty or sexuality is bad, because we have such great sexuality and we love sexuality.
Yeah.
But there's something about a woman who's like, first off, holding a standard that says the value of my body isn't easily given away to you just because you have some desire. And a man who cannot manage his sexual desire tells me he can't sacrifice in a million other areas.
Yeah.
He has a weak ability to choose, and that's not safe to me. And so even that is like beautiful. It doesn't mean that always works out well. Because people can be like, oh, we waited till we were married and he's still, no, but I'm saying like along the line places where someone would want to make decisions, but they go, no, I'm gonna create delayed gratification, and they prove that abundant.
And same with women, because you made it a men can't wait.
Because I'm talking to men.
Okay.
I'm having that conversation with them.
I know a ton of women who they can't wait and they push it.
Yeah, and they push it.
Yeah.
But the point is like areas of life where there's delayed gratification.
Yes.
There's actually the building blocks for trust, and there's also the building blocks for abundance.
Yeah.
And sacrifice. And they even say that in wealth, people of wealth, they're like, the people who are more likely to be wealthy are those who have the
delayed gratification.
And so there's a value in that. And that, to me, that's how I approached relationship with you, is not only sexually, but life-wise, was just like, okay, I'll pay a lot for this. There'll be delayed gratification in areas, but the byproduct will be an astounding marriage with really great connection, even in our messiest of places.
Ugh, and you were right. So I want to just take some time and talk about you in this process, because you have been, gosh, the lifeline for me in this season. I'm emotional again.
It's your period.
No. Because nobody really knows how much it has cost except for you. But I mean, there were times this year where I had infections in so many places that sex was impossible for months. And you know that's like, we love sex.
Yeah, it's not like we struggle as far as wanting to be together and connected that way.
Yeah, we couldn't kiss during that time either. We couldn't have sex. So it was like reversing back to, and this is again why it's kind of great if you wait in dating, because if seasons like this come up in marriage,
right,
your partner can go through it.
Yeah, I'm not off trying to find another woman to fulfill needs.
Yeah. But so anyway, there's been so many times of me being hopeless or so afraid or processing all my emotions. You've held me and let me cry. You've validated. I mean, you have been the hero of this season, and not because I've depended on you, because I've depended on...
I don't feel like I'm your source at all.
No, not my sources. I want to say, like, not my hero, like, you're the reason I made it through.
Right.
I have lots of people. I've never had so many people carrying the weight with me, which I think is healthy, so it's not codependent with you. You shouldn't be my answer. You shouldn't be my source. When I'm going through chronic sickness, it shouldn't all be on you. No. You don't have the capacity to carry that.
I don't.
But because it's been spread out, I will say that you have been the rock and the kindest gift to me in this. And so I just want to talk and have you get to share, because I know tons of people who listen have chronic sickness, and their spouse, either their husband or their wife, has to walk through that with them. Yeah. And I want to talk about what it is like being on the other side of it.
Well, first off, just backing up a little bit, my story, I said that a lot of my childhood, I wasn't allowed to be sick.
Yeah, totally.
It was suck it up and get over it and power through it. And I only remember a handful of sick days in my childhood that, were warranted. Otherwise, it was figure out how to deal with it. And as it evolved in life, I felt like I was an impenetrable tank that could do anything.
Totally.
It's fine. I broke my toe. Keep walking on it.
Totally.
I'll be good.
Yes.
And, I oftentimes felt like there was no reason to not be productive when you were sick.
Yeah.
And early on, let's just talk about this. So
this was modeled to you. Your mom had back surgery and was
up out of bed about 3 days later, I think, making like literally in a half body, three-quarter body cast.
Yep.
Hobbling around in the kitchen making breakfast.
Totally. So
and my dad was fighting with her about it.
To just
my dad did it too. I mean, I almost cut off fingers all the way, and Dad's like, where the electrical tape is. Go back to working. Like, you don't need to go to the emergency room, and which is fine. I don't care, but. what happened was, so we're hearing the elements of what strength I've been in this season, but we have to understand where I came from.
Yes.
And how I interacted with you in the beginning, because when I interacted, there was two modes that I did operate out of. There was a compassion where I would go out of my way late at night to go get you stuff from,
absolutely,
like from Walgreens or things like that, hunt down something to help you when you were sick with different things.
Absolutely.
And I was very sacrificial in that
and very
element.
supportive.
Mm-hmm. But then I also had another part of my emotions where I was very irritable. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oftentimes I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, why can't you do this? Just get up and do it. Just do it. Like, why can you not get off that couch? Or why can you not, help out and do it? And oftentimes you'd be like, I just can't. And I would progressively become more and more irritated with this can't attitude. And, there were areas where you had defeat in life.
It was mixture, because I had victim mentality.
There was that stuff.
And sickness.
And so there was part of it where I was warring against what I felt like was victim mentality, and part of it where I just didn't understand the sickness part of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But there were times where my heart would go back and forth between being warm towards you and then being very cold inside. Like, I know that I could go off and be like, oh, she gives up so easily, and what's wrong with her, and why does she feel this way, and why can't she overcome it? And like you said, heavy judgment. I think one of the gifts of suffering in life is that it illuminates humanity in a different way.
Oh, that's a beautiful sentence. The gift of suffering is that it illuminates humanity in a different way.
And it brings a lot of things into focus that were very unfocused before suffering. And so I know that a lot of us are terrified of suffering. And I don't believe that there's some God that creates it, but I believe that humanity lends way to suffering, and suffering exists inside of it. And there is a beautiful gift in it if we're willing to extract it. And we've talked about that before in the past. So for me, I entered into my season of sickness that I've shared in the past, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I went into a physical suffering where my body was slowly dying and didn't know it fully. And my body was crashing out, and I was failing everyone around me. And then I realized the idea that there are times when a human being can't push through. And every part of me felt very misunderstood.
Oh, yeah.
Felt very judged. I lost a lot of friends in that season, not in bad ways. It was just like the idea of...
You had no capacity.
I had no capacity. The idea of answering a text message made me want to sob cry. Oh. And it was at one point...
And that is when you understand chronic sickness.
That is when you understand
Because
it.
In the past, if I would have said, responding to this text message makes me want to sob cry, you'd be like...
What is wrong with you?
It's a text message. Just sit there and write it.
Yeah, it's nonsensical.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't until the doctor that looked at me and looked at my blood results and said, are you chronically suicidal and bedridden?
Yeah.
And she was just like, I don't even know how to respond to what I'm seeing here. You shouldn't be functioning. You shouldn't even be sitting up on this table right now. And I was like, oh, really? Because I wrote a book and launched it and then did a bunch of business stuff.
Launched a business. Yeah, totally.
And she's like, I don't get it. It's not possible. But all of a sudden it illuminated to me the reality of my struggle that I didn't have compassion for fully in myself. Because I didn't know that you could that pain was justifiable, and the results of pain were justifiable. Like the backlash of being chronically sick, you could go, oh, there's a reason for this. And it was really scary also, as a side note, to use my body as an excuse, because it felt like I'm using it as an excuse.
Right.
So if I told someone I feel too sick, I felt shame. I felt guilt. I felt condemnation. And it was also a scary thing to tell someone I'm feeling better as I was getting better, because I didn't know, all of a sudden.
What if today I feel good, but tomorrow I feel bad again?
I don't. And all of a sudden people are like, I thought you said you were better.
Right.
And now you can't do this again. And you're scared of what people might start believing about you. And the reason I'm actually tackling this for a moment.
Yeah, I love it.
Is to actually speak into the chronic sickness experience that people might have, or chronic suffering of some sort.
Yeah.
Because there's so much guilt and shame and condemnation for feeling like a failure and feeling like you can't be normal like everyone else and show up to life the way that other people do. And that you don't know, for me, I was like, well, do people think I'm always lying?
Yeah.
Like, am I using this as an
Right.
excuse just to get out of things? And so that's the mental battle.
Oh, okay. They say chronic sickness is...
The purpose of chronic sickness is actually to break your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Not they say. There is a quote from someone.
There's a quote from a person.
And that's what
that
they
went
say.
through chronic sickness for a very long amount of time. I'm like, yep, absolutely. It felt like chronic sickness was out to break my mind. And I had to become incredibly powerful inside of my mind and my being to overcome it. And so what started developing for me was such a deep sense of compassion. Where all of a sudden I went so much deeper into the humanity of people that I don't know that I would have had access to without the suffering experience. And maybe there are beautiful ways that people have accessed it and love that they're able to access without it. I don't know. I just didn't get it that way.
Yeah.
But there is something inside of me. I remember where I connected to deep grief for your experience, where I felt so gutted at almost a cellular level. As I realized, like, oh, this is a portion of the weight of what you're living in on and off every day and every week. And you're still choosing life. And I think that there are people out there who have had long times of suffering, and they're going, no one knows the price I am paying to step foot outside of my bed.
To exist.
Like, to say yes to it. I remember my body was in so much pain. Every night I would lay in bed and go, I just hope I don't wake up in the morning. I just want to die. I just want to die. And that was different from the suicidal tendencies of my childhood, where it was an emotional suicidal thing. It was my body screaming, I want to die. I can't make it one more day. Please let me out of this.
Right.
And there was a crossroads, and where I had said, God, I need either a miracle. I actually need you to end my life. I cannot take one more day. But facing death like that and facing sickness like that will grow something deep, deep, deep inside of you. And so now, over the last couple of years, how would you say that I respond to you? I mean, I'll let you kind of fill in the gaps there.
Yeah.
In comparison.
Well, I wanted to hit on really quick the failure thing that you talked about is so real as somebody in chronic sickness, because basically in chronic sickness, I am grieving every month or 2 months or every so often a new restriction on my life.
Right.
A new thing that I can't do that I used to be able to do, or a new thing that I can't do that everyone else can do. And I remember, like, in this season, I unfollowed any ambitious friends. Because every time I saw somebody something, every time I saw somebody doing something great with their life, I was like, I'm literally can't do anything.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and can't do anything. And you're doing this huge thing, and you have these kids, and you have this business, and you're charging ahead in life. And like, I just got out of bed, and today I made the bed. That's like the big win for me, which this is again why I want to teach about compassion, because when you get realistic expectations, changes the game. So it went from I did nothing to being able to be like, oh my gosh, I made the bed. And for me, that cost everything.
Yeah.
And for me, that's as much as this person who's taking over the world. Like I just saw this post last night, and the post is this father whose daughter has an eye patch. And it probably hit me so hard because I'm like, that was me. I was that kid. But so the girl is sitting down at the kitchen table, her eye patch is over her eye, and she's writing out Valentines to each of her classmates. And she's so cute. And he is like, she gave him a Valentine, and he's like, I'm sitting here crying because I can see this girl, because when they patch your eye, they cover the eye that can see, and so your other eye can't see. He's like, I'm watching her, and no one knows the cost that it's taking her to just write Valentines to her classmates, but she loves her classmates so much that she's going to sit here for hours and strain so hard to see out of an eye that can't see and write Valentines. And he's like, I'm just so moved by it. And I just felt like such a beautiful view of how I see God inside of suffering. Yeah. That like, he is so much like, oh, you making the bed that day, you choosing to love people still, you choosing to fight for hope. Actually, I see how much that costs you, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, I just like anyway, you have become so compassionate now. Now, I would say you are so validating.
Yeah.
And so much empathy. And because of that, it has lifted such a weight because of the I'm not alone.
Yeah. It's a really big deal. Mm-hmm. So with that said, that's kind of like been my heart posture in this entire year. But I think that for me, and I know that for the human experience, when there's someone that you love really deeply and you can't save them from what they're going through or the suffering that they're in, you can feel deeply powerless. Mm-hmm. And I know for men, especially men inside of marriage, they're going, I would take any affliction I could in exchange so my wife doesn't have to go through this or my kids wouldn't have to. And I know that there's so many times I'd be like, I will literally go through everything she's going through if she doesn't have to go through it.
Yeah.
So that she can be fine and live life. And I know that when I talk to, and I'm speaking to men because that's, I'm sure mothers have whatever, but I'm just going to talk to the husband or the father
experience. Very relatable
experience.
To the moms who have kids like this or husbands.
Yeah. I know that when husbands I've talked to who even have their kids suffering in something, they're just debilitated. That's where they get debilitated. They're like, I don't know what to do. I feel so shattered and broken. My child has cancer and I'm just like every day, just trying to survive every day, knowing what they're going through and I can't change it. And
actually in that place is where people sometimes get angry or kind of edgy and they actually lose their capacity to give what they do have to that person.
Right. They even become numb.
Yeah.
And almost bitter and resentful towards a person.
Or compartmentalize or try to live in denial because it feels overwhelming to face powerlessness.
Yeah.
And most of us don't know how to sit with someone in pain.
And part of the journey of overcoming my powerlessness in the situation with you has been accepting your journey of suffering. And that doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, this is going to be forever and I accept that this is forever. I actually have hope for the healing process, but it's almost like we each are given a unique journey in life that we're going to experience. And for me to want to eliminate and eradicate your journey, that there's something beautiful to extract out of it, is almost selfish. In the ways of like, I don't want you to have pain, so I don't have pain. And I want to take away whatever like your journey might hold for you in this. And I don't, so part of me goes, and hear me on this, because you could draw a lot of conclusions from what I'm trying to say. So I'm trying to articulate this as best as I can. But there's something for where I looked and had to say, I accept that this is part of her story right now. And I accept that there is gifts that are hidden inside of this for her. And I'm going to allow myself to hold space to grieve with her when she needs to grieve and to have compassion for her in places of compassion. But I'm not going to look to find a way to eliminate her story altogether. And I'm going to now be at peace and trust her story as it unfolds uniquely for it and participate in the ways that I have grace to participate. And part of this was rooted in letting go of over responsibility. You know, love, like my expression of love in some places was overly responsible. I have to carry the weight of what she has. And I'm like, I can carry a piece of the weight of her thing. I can grab a portion through loving in a certain way, and other people grab certain portions in the way they love you, but not one person can grab all of it for you.
No.
And you have to allow yourself to let all these people grab portions and then carry what you have the capacity to carry.
Yes.
And it's really this relational thing. And if I tried to be everything and carry it all, I would be removing other people's opportunity as well to participate. If I said, I'm going to be your full source and try and figure out the solution every day for your pain, then it wouldn't allow you the opportunity or them for you to go, hey, I need you over here. Will you come in and draw from them and deepen your relationships in that?
Well, and not only that, here's what would happen. If you were my source for everything, you can only do that for so long, and then you'll have a breakdown. Then you won't be able to be a support anymore. And one of the things,
full burnout happens.
Yeah, you can't actually be someone's entire source for very long consistently.
Yeah. And
if we're thinking the long game, which is a great way to do it, how can I love this person well? Well, it's not by burning out.
No,
and lots of people do that. They overly engage.
They do the full caretaking mode.
And then they just completely shut that person out of their life because they can't do it anymore. Instead of like, no, I'm going to give a little bit consistently.
Yeah.
And I watched you actually take care of your heart. And I actually think a lot of partners don't know how to do this because they feel guilt. They don't know how to take care of themselves because they're like, well, this is hard for this person.
Yeah.
And so they don't take care of themselves. And I've seen you do a really good job of taking care of your heart in the midst of this. So why don't you talk about the things that you've done to take care of you while I've been going through such a hard season?
Well, there's a couple different facets, from emotional processing to actually enjoying life. In general. I'll talk about the practical enjoyments of life. I've been deliberate about allowing myself to go on adventures with friends, which has brought up grief. I mean, moments where I've cried about the idea of seeing like the ever-growing gap as my body has gotten so much better and you're still here. And I'm going, my best friend and partner isn't able to go on this adventure and I miss her and I want her to be here. And then I've had to let myself cry that out. But at the same time, I've gone and said, I'm going to be okay with her not being okay there and let her walk that out. And today I'm going to go have fun, have this experience with Marcus or whoever it is that I'm hanging out with for the day. And so that's allowed me to even be stronger because I'm being filled and allowing my heart to have joy in encounters. And in those encounters, it's sometimes I never say anything about what's going on with us. Sometimes I use those encounters as times to share like, oh, I'm really sad. And it turns into me crying with a friend and then playing some video games or all kinds of stuff like that. But that balance ends up creating a really healthy space where I don't feel resentful at you. Yeah. In that sense.
I remember growing up because my mom was sick growing up and my dad didn't do that. He didn't go have fun. Right. He didn't go but the thing is he was resentful of my mom. Right. And so when he was at home with her, he wasn't kind. Right. I mean, he was very kind in so many ways. That's not a good explanation. He took care of her so faithfully for so many years. He did all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the errands. He took off work to take her to doctor's appointments. So he was
very sacrificial in some incredible ways.
Yes. But he didn't go have fun. And I watched him and I'm like, you're dying, Dad. Right. I can't lose both parents. Like you're dying on the inside. And so I have seen how important it is for you to still get to live life. Yeah. Now, you don't live life and ignore me either. No. There's a balance of...
And that's where I live at, it's in that balance place. But I want to back up a little bit. So there's those practical things like that. But one of the things that's been key for me is really getting my heart connected to fathering moments with other male figures who have been through some pretty heavy stuff themselves and share my story with them and be able to pull from their strength that they can lend and hear what they have to say about the journey, how they process their pain or I've sat down with some people who are like, I'm still figuring out how to process the pain, but I'm in this as well. And just the camaraderie of like, oh, I'm not alone. There's someone else that has someone suffering in their lives. And So we're like brothers in arms, moving down this journey, finding solutions. But I remember July maybe of this, I think it was July this last year. There was this guy named Stu, and Stu's wife, what I'm about to say, you can believe it or not, I just don't care. So whatever, listen to it, believe it, don't criticize it, judge it, I don't care. But Stu's wife, Chloe, had been chronically sick with something that was, I can't remember the exact disease, but it was something that was like similar to MS or something.
Her legs didn't work. Yeah, she couldn't do stairs. She couldn't.
He would have to carry her to and from different places. This was years ago. And for years in their marriage, it was like that. She got really debilitatingly sick. And he eventually took her up to Toronto, where there was a God revival that was taking place there, where people were getting healed and miracles were happening there in that place. And he was a very logic-based guy who was like, I don't buy this bullshit, basically, but whatever, I'm going to go on this journey. That was kind of his approach at some level. And so he had his wife there, and she was sitting laying in he'd laid her down up front by the stairs, and he was at the back of the room, and he was just processing some of what was going on in his own journey. And he looks up from where he's at because he hears people yelling and screaming, and his wife is running up and down the stairs. And he's like, I don't understand what's happening. What is happening? Chloe is running up and down stairs, and she's just running all around. And she had a miraculous healing that took place. And it took him multiple years from there to actually get past his logic brain to go, I don't know what I just saw. I know my wife is fully functioning. She did not go to a doctor overnight. Everything changed.
Totally.
But so I listened to Stu, and a lot of my pain, I'm going to talk about some of my suffering. Because in my journey with God, I have progressively come to the idea that he is a good dad.
Yeah.
That he is so fully faithful and involved in our lives, and he is working overtime to break down the lies in our hearts and our minds that keep us separated from that radical, unconditional love. And so there's areas of my heart where I've progressively gone, I know you're a good daddy. Unquestionably, you're faithful. But when it came to this area with regards to you, a lot of pain started coming up, especially when I'd hear stories like that, because I'd be like, where are you? Why won't you heal her like this? Like, I've seen these types of miracles myself in places. I've been part of miracles, and you're not showing up in this way. What do we have to do? And there became this tug of war inside of my soul, this angst. And there was very angry moments. I remember yelling and screaming. I remember one day just being like, fuck you, you're a shitty dad. Real dad, like my own earthly dad would lay down his life and every bit of his money to heal Abby. Why won't you heal her? What's going on? You're not real. You can't be real because someone this good shouldn't be suffering like this. Where are you in this? And those are the realities of my weepings that would happen and the torment inside of my heart as I was working things out. And I think that there's different ways that we work out those issues, and sometimes we don't ever have answers for why things come a certain way, how they happen. But I know that in this portion of the journey for me, it's been about healing the lie that's still hiding in a spot that says he's not a good dad, he doesn't care, he's not involved. And I've been overcoming these hurdles where I'm like, okay, I actually believe that you're a good dad. But with that said, I found myself one day in July, going back to the story, we were in Texas and I could feel this thing bubbling up. I'm like, I just need to call Stu. I need someone to be with me. I feel so scared because I was so effing terrified you were going to die. Yeah. And that's part of chronic sickness and suffering, is that there's waves of moments where you start going, what if I lose this person? And I remember saying, I don't know that I can move forward in life if I lose Abby. Like, it's one thing if you divorce because you're equally agreeing like this doesn't work. We're walking away.
Well, not everybody's equally agreeing, but okay. Yes.
But there's something.
There's choice involved.
There's choices involved. But to have an injustice of you dying, where I'm like, no, I love this person. There's no reason for us to be separated. There was a lot working out in my soul. And I reached out to Stu. I was like, texted him. I was like, can we just talk? And I wasn't more than a few seconds in that conversation, and I am just sob crying in the car alone with him. And I'm like, Stu, how do you do it? What did you do? I feel so deeply alone in this. I can't save her. I can't save her. Every day is reminding me that I can't save her. I can't take this away from her. Yeah. I would do anything. And I'm just like sobbing in it. And he's just sitting with me. He goes, yep, I know it. I know that feeling. I know every bit of it. I'm here with you. And I just keep crying. And there was something so radically powerful about finding someone who had been on that journey. And it was even more beautiful having someone that was on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Where he could hold that space open for me and go, you can say whatever you want. And the most like aggressive, angry things about God and life were coming out of me, and he didn't need to correct me. He just knew that my soul needed to process in that way, that pain. He didn't need to tell me, oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be fine. Chloe had a miraculous healing. So's Abby. He was like, yep, totally. And I don't know what this journey is going to look like for you, Justin, but I know it's going to demand that you allow yourself the ability to be fully seen and known by other men consistently.
Such good advice.
Here's the gift that's been extracted in this season for me, in that journey, is that love has radically gotten in deeper than ever before. Not just like, oh, I have pain for me, but I saw people show up in that, but now I have pain for someone else and people are showing up. And these have all been these gateways to unconditional love hitting me. And it's been a gateway in your suffering to see the Father as I've reached out to people. Like, oh, he is a really good dad. He is actually with me in this suffering as I will let down my guard and allow those doors to be open to my heart and let people in and share where I'm at in this process. I can see the reflection of the Father's love through these relationships that lay down their time and their heart energy to pray with me or talk with me. And so there's something that happens inside of me that's been so amazingly healed and encouraged in that. Now, I don't know if you have anything to say. I know if.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I think I feel two things. Like, I have felt so safe because you have consistently called other men.
Yeah.
And other people. When you feel emotions, you actually consistently go to other people and you release it.
Yeah.
And you get your soul loved and you get your soul taken care of and you get you healed.
Yeah.
And that has meant so much to me.
And that saved me from bitterness.
Yeah.
And it saved me from resentment towards you, towards God, towards a circumstance, towards people. It like letting love in saved my soul in this season. And
it made it so that you could hold space for me to just be in pain. And the truth is, I felt really loved every time that you would go process your feelings. Like there's something so healing about knowing that your life impacts somebody. So like when you would go process your feelings, it's like, oh, I remember this couple that I worked with and the husband just was like so stoic and didn't let anything affect him. That's what he learned as a kid. He didn't have a bad heart. And so the wife would try all kinds of things. Like she'd try to be nice to affect him and loving, and it didn't affect him. She'd try to be angry and bully him. It wouldn't affect him. And there was so much pain from him being unaffectable. And I could tell my heart would get healed. Just hearing about you, processing your pain with them made me feel seen and known.
Yeah.
I felt seen and known because I knew if you were having that much pain about it, that it like validated this is a really painful, hard season. This is really hard. Like this is hard. And it's hard enough that it's hurting you and it's hurting me. But the acknowledgement of it, feel like my counselor says that if you're experiencing reality and the person across from you is saying that's not real.
Right. Like this is no big deal. I'm great. No problem.
Then it can feel crazy making. And so it felt so good. And I actually know so many spouses or parents who never let that person see that they're affected. And I think they're missing out on the love of it. Now, you don't share it with me like I need to fix you. You're not coming to me and saying, will you comfort me about your pain?
Right.
You're going to get comfort about it.
And I want to add some key things to that. So recently I had a dialogue with a buddy of mine whose wife has been chronically sick for 20 years. In ways that I don't think we can compare sickness, but there's definitely types of suffering that she's experienced that is seemingly on a scale even more pain than maybe you've experienced. I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't compare, but she's been in a lot of physical problems.
Right. I'm trying to say, yes, there's been some extreme suffering for her as well.
Yeah.
And in that suffering process, he has been a rock, but in a way that hasn't acknowledged
how much it affected
him until more recently. He showed up to the scene and he said, "Hey, I need to share my pain." And all of a sudden had a meltdown in front of some friends and her, and it kind of scared her. But it was good.
Well, it would be scary if that's never happened before.
Right, because it's like, I don't know what's going on.
This is new. Ah!
Yeah. And that was super healthy for their relationship, and would have been amazing for her if he knew how to have the capacity to do that early on, to let her know, like, so one of the point of this is one of the things in our exchanges is occasionally throughout the journey, I've allowed myself to sit, like, I remember times just sitting on the floor of the kitchen and crying, like, I am so sad about your body right now, and I'm letting that pain out. And you had the capacity to not spiral into shame.
No. Because I don't see your pain as a reflection of me being bad.
Right.
I see it as, that's a normal human response.
Yeah. And inside of it, like you just said, it actually validated the reality of where you're at, and you didn't feel alone in it. And the reason I'm taking what you're saying, highlighting what this other guy had done and how we're operating is that some of you have been playing the role of superhero in the suffering process. And there might be some of you that have kids that have cancer or a sickness, and they've never seen dad or mom cry even once about the reality of it. And they're like, no, I got this. I'm good. And instead of going like, hey, there's been a couple times I've allowed my kid to see me cry, and go, hey, sweetie, I'm crying because there is a real pain that you're experiencing, and you don't have to carry mom or dad's pain.
Yeah.
I don't need you to get rid of it, and dialogue with them. Like, I don't need you, but I'm going to let you see the vulnerable parts of me, so you don't think that this is just an easy peasy thing for any of us, because it helps those kids, even if you dialogue well inside of it, to go, oh, that's a good way to process pain.
Yeah. One thing I wouldn't do with your kids is process your fear with them.
Right.
Process your fear with your adult friends.
Right.
You can process your sadness.
Like, dad's sad today.
Yeah.
These tears are because he's just sad for you. I wish I could do that.
Take this from you.
And you don't have to feel bad
Yeah.
about dad feeling that. This is part of our human journey together in relationship.
And this is us getting to feel together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, in thinking about it, all of our triggers show up in these areas. Our inadequacy, our fears, our shame. And so most people aren't great at comforting somebody who's going through something really hard, because it pushes all their buttons. It could be shame, like, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to know what to say. I'm not going to know what to do. Or it could be what a lot of people do, which is like, I either ignore it or I minimize it, or I tell you to get over it. Like, or I'm always trying to fix you inside of it. Like, I'm always trying to just make it better. Like, oh, but here's a great thing that happened today. Or, oh, but aren't you excited about this? And really the best gift we can give as humans is just being willing to sit in the pain with people.
Yeah.
Now, when you sat in the pain with me, that didn't mean you lived there.
No. And there's a difference between taking a rest in a rocking chair.
Yep.
And all of a sudden making it your home.
Yes, totally.
And that's, I haven't made that my home.
No.
And that's why it's so key to be able to jump into the adventures of life. And there are days where I don't even think about what you're going through.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm having fun today. I'm just doing life. Life is normal. I do want to talk about something because we don't have a lot of time left, but I think that for me, this is highly valuable to have this conversation. I had a dream. I want to talk about the spiritual aspect of my journey, because the fullness of my strength, where I am drawing it from, is a higher source. And that's just part of being on our podcast is participating in all aspects of our heart and our life. And part of it is a spiritual aspect. For me, I had a dream recently, and this woman comes up to me in the dream, and I want to share that on the next episode. You do? Uh-huh. You have another episode.
Yeah.
That you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And what do you want to talk about in that next episode? Because you were surprising me right now.
Surprise! Oh, the next episode, we're going to talk about finding your fight. Finding that thing inside of you.
Okay.
That, because that's part of the season for both of us in sickness. We had to find our fight.
All right. Well, you just got a big pause on all of that. And if you want to hear about our finding our fight, you can tune into the next episode. And way to make a cliffhanger.
I know.
I'm on a cliffhanger now. I was I was really ready to share that.
Well, and I think it's important that we talk about, because in this episode and the last episode, we both talked about the accusations we had come up against God. And in ourselves. And I want to actually talk through the journey of that and getting to the other side of that for us. Because I think in seasons of suffering is when this is the hardest thing to wrestle with.
Yeah, both the accusation against oneself and then against our creator, if we even believe one exists. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
The cliffhanger. Dun, 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 dun,
let me see if there's anything else I want to say just to wrap this up, is that it is not that. We will discuss. Yeah, I'm verbally processing right now.
Okay, let me jump in.
Yeah.
I just want to say out there, if you're listening and you love somebody who's going through something horrible, taking care of your soul in the middle of that is so important.
Yeah.
And secondhand trauma, secondhand pain is very real.
Yeah.
Secondhand, you are getting affected by it. I know people who've watched people die or people who've watched people fight through cancer or whatever, it actually affects you as much. And so if you feel guilty about, maybe you need to see a counselor or get help, or Justin, start calling fathers. You started calling father figures regularly after that conversation. I have to get men in my life so that I don't feel like the strongest person. And so I just want to, if that's you, then it's so important for you to do that. If you are the one who is sick, I think it's beneficial to hear that if people respond poorly, it is probably about their own fears or inadequacies or not knowing how to deal with pain.
Big time. And the last thing I'll say, especially to those of you who have been on the outside of suffering and watching that in someone you love, I want you to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Today you can think, oh yeah, there's a guy out there that knows my experience at some level, and I'm not alone. There are many other people out there watching suffering happening, trying to work this out inside of their soul and how to position themselves. So I think breaking that idea, and I'll also say this, it's easy for when someone's really sick for them to get all the attention and the person who's close to them to not get it, and to feel in a different type of aloneness than the person in the sickness, because it's very easy to go, especially if you're playing the superhero role, to be able to go, no one sees that I'm behind the lines, suffering for this person and walking this out with them. And so I just want to highlight those of you today so that you go, oh yeah, I'm seen.
Yeah. Because otherwise eventually you'll have a breakdown and it'll be a mess, which is not horrible, but it's so great to take care of your
true.
needs so you don't have to get that far down the road.
All right. Well, hey, if you were moved or touched by this, rate, review, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to head over to stumblconsulting.com/courses/the
Compassion Project.
all one word. And you can check out that and see if you want to get on board and enjoy that teaching and support the journey that we're on. Thanks so much, and bye now.